Today, we're really getting into it, looking closely at a recent wrestling main event that, well, it had everyone buzzing. We're dissecting that World Heavyweight Championship match, Jey Uso versus Logan Paul from Saturday night's main event. Okay, so let's set the scene. Tampa. And the atmosphere. From everything we've gathered, it sounded absolutely incredible.
Oh, yeah. The commentary really painted a picture. They talked about this electric crowd, everyone yeeting along with Jey Uso. One source even mentioned feeling the walls move, that kind of energy.
Wow. That really sets the stage.
Totally. And adding to that vibe, the sources pointed out some night history. Ringside, you had Hall of Famers Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham, the U.S. Express.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and the reports we looked at noted they actually won the very first match on Saturday night's main event, like 40 years ago.
It's a great little detail, a nice nod.
Definitely. And commentary also apparently ran down some other big things from earlier in the show, sort of building that energy, you know? Recapping Zelina Vega, Damian Priest, and John Cena's wins. And then there was Bronson Reed making a surprise return and just crushing CM Punk.
Whoa, okay.
And Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins apparently won a match too. So yeah, it sounds like it was a pretty jam-packed show before the main event even got going.
Which brings us to the main event itself. Jey Uso and Logan Paul.
Yep. Then a video package is shown, and it specifically highlights Jey Uso's popularity with the crowd.
Right.
Yeah.
It mentions his title win at WrestleMania over Gunther.
Oh, yeah.
And for anyone who follows this, I mean, beating Gunther, ending that historic reign at WrestleMania, that's a huge, huge statement. It establishes success, fan connection, uses that right away to build a perception.
Yeah, definitely sets a tone. But then, right after showing that big moment for Jey Uso, the focus shifts. And we get this claim from Logan Paul.
You people are so stupid.
Wow. Yeah. Immediately pairs that direct quote with a mention of his, quote, entitled attitude.
So you get this incredibly deliberate sequence. You got this symbol of earned success, massive fan popularity, immediately followed by a quote that's, well, pretty dismissive of the audience, and then this label of entitlement. This juxtaposition, putting these two things right next to each other, is intended to illustrate the contrast between these two individuals.
All right, spells it out. Yeah, a real contrast to Jay's whole vibe. And we know Paul had gotten the better of Jey with sneak attacks leading up to this. So in one corner, Jey Uso, he's the World Heavyweight Champion, defending the title. Graphics apparently showed his reign at 35 days, this being just his second defense.
And his first ever one-on-one match against Logan Paul, right?
Exactly. And we already mentioned his connection with the fans, the whole yeet thing. Just undeniable popularity.
And the reports we dug through, they highlighted something else pretty significant. This match. It happened exactly 15 years to the day since Jey and his brother Jimmy debuted in WWE on Raw.
15 years. Wow. Quite an anniversary to be defending the big one.
Definitely. We then see footage of Jey's entrance in the WWE 2K game before we go to commercial. Back from commercial, we get Logan Paul's entrance.
Right. The challenger, former U.S. champ, obviously huge global recognition outside of wrestling. And, I mean, you gotta admit, he's picked up the in-ring stuff remarkably fast.
True. But his persona, the accounts we read consistently mention that entitled attitude. Plus that backstage bit earlier in the night, the sources mention John Cena kind of leaning on Jey, putting pressure on him about maybe losing to a quote-unquote YouTuber.
Yeah, adding that little bit of extra pressure. So the stakes were obviously the World Heavyweight Championship. Big deal.
But there was more, wasn't there? The sources mentioned an immediate consequence for the winner.
That's right. The winner was already booked. They had to defend the title against the former champ, Gunther, on the upcoming Raw, June 9th.
So that adds another layer right from the bell.
Absolutely. So, okay, the bell rings. Match starts. Early on, the descriptions mention the basics, you know. Collar and elbow, Jey gets a side headlock, a whip, shoulder tackle, takes Paul down. Standard stuff.
But Paul, as expected and as noted in the reports, showed off that athleticism pretty quick.
Oh, yeah. Dropping down, leapfrogs, uppercuts. He reversed an Irish whip, even did a dive over Jey. Flashy.
And he landed some decent offense early, too.
He did. Decked Jey with a back elbow, a kick, then hit the blockbuster. And what stood out in one report was how he just popped right back up. Followed it with the slingshot pescado to the floor. And the sources made a point to mention Paul's training. Apparently, he practices these big matches hard, even has a ring at his place in Puerto Rico just for rehearsal.
You can tell that practice pays off, even if the crowd doesn't always love him for it.
Right. Now, speaking of the match itself, probably the biggest point of discussion across all the sources we looked at, the timing, the pace.
Yeah, that jumped out. How long was it exactly?
Well, the reports clocked it around 9 minutes, 45, maybe 50 seconds, bell to bell.
Wow, that's short for a world title main event with all this going on.
Incredibly short. And the commentary we reviewed really hammered this point home. They had to cram so much into that time. The match, action, a commercial break.
And as we'll get to, a huge angle at the end, all in under 10 minutes.
Exactly. Some descriptions made it sound like a sprint. One source used the phrase they had to go boom, boom, boom just to fit it all in.
Okay, so they were racing the clock.
Pretty much. And this led to, I think, a key insight from the sources. One analysis suggested that maybe the main goal here wasn't delivering like a 5-star technical classic in this specific match.
Right.
But rather using that limited TV time to showcase the big names, hit the key story beats, and most importantly, set up the angles for future shows, like Money in the Bank.
That makes sense given the time crunch. Focus on the narrative momentum for the overall product.
Precisely. But even in that short window, there were some definite key moments, some near falls.
Jey got his stuff in.
Oh, yeah. Hit a spinning enziguri, the running hip attack that got a 2 count.
And there were counters, too?
Yep, sharp ones. Jey went for the Uso splash. Paul got the knees up. Then Paul tried a springboard moonsault. Some called it a lion salt, but Jey got his knees up that time. Tit for tat.
Nice sequence. Jey also dodged that titanium punch early on, right? Hit the pop-up Samoan drop.
He did, yeah. But Paul kicked out of that. And then things getting a little messy with the ring itself.
Ah, the turnbuckle pad.
Exactly. Paul ripped off the middle one. One account described it vividly, like he was holding on for dear life, while Jey pulled him. Then he just yanked the pad off.
Resourceful, I guess.
Or
desperate.
Bit of both, maybe. Then they spilled outside. Jey clotheslined Paul over the ropes. Jey then went for the suicide dive.
But Paul was ready for it.
Scouted it perfectly, met him with a straight right hand. Commentary apparently highlighted it. Right hand by Logan Paul caught Jey Uso.
Ouch.
And Paul slammed Jey's head into the turnbuckle.
Just like that.
And this led to that moment with the new move name.
Right, the snapshot lariat.
Yeah, Paul went for something that looked a lot like a buckshot lariat, and Michael Cole on commentary called it the snapshot lariat. The sources discussing it, they noted the name similarity, maybe an homage, maybe because Paul's always taking photos, shots on his phone.
Interesting speculation. But Jey countered it.
He did. Showed great ring awareness, countered right into a super kick. Paul still kicked out at 2, but yeah, commentary praised Jey for thinking fast there.
And that exposed steel came back into play again, didn't it?
It did. Later on, Paul drove Jey shoulder first right into it, really targeting that area. Because right after that, Paul hits the titanium punch, the big one. The move that, as the reports reminded everyone, had knocked Jey out cold before.
But Jey kicked out.
Kicked out at 2. But the reaction, according to the sources, was interesting. A bit muted, apparently.
Really? Why?
Well, speculation was maybe it felt too ludicrous, like too unbelievable for the finish, or maybe just too early. It was only about 5 minutes into this super short match. Fans maybe didn't buy it as the end just yet.
Okay. But Jey didn't stay down long after that kick out.
Nope. Recovered incredibly fast, hit another super kick just seconds later. Then he went up top, going for the big one, the Uso splash.
And this is where it all went off the rails.
Completely. Jey hits the splash, goes for the cover, and suddenly John Cena slides into view, yanks the referee, Rod Zapata right out of the ring, stops the count.
Just like that. Pulled the ref out.
Pulled him right out. Then Cena jumps in the ring and just goes after Jey. Flurry of rights, stomps. Sources called it a ground and pound attack. Vicious.
Okay, wait. Why wasn't that a DQ? The sources must have addressed that.
They did. The consensus seemed to be, well, the ref was out cold on the floor. And given those insane time constraints we talked about,
They just had to keep the story moving, get to the planned finish.
pretty much no time to stop and sort out DQ rules, apparently. And that chaos. Perfect cue for the next surprise.
Cody Rhodes.
Cody's music hits. Kingdom. He comes tearing down to the ring. And the sources were quick to flag this first time we'd seen Cody on TV since WrestleMania 41 Night 2.
Where he lost to Cena, right. And Cena used some nefarious means in that one.
That's the history. So Cody hits the ring, goes right after Cena,
Yeah.
haymakers flying, hits that drop-down uppercut, and then plants Cena with the crossroads.
How did Cena take it?
One source specifically noted Cena did not take the crossroads particularly well, looked rough.
But the action still wasn't done. Paul tried to get involved.
Yeah. While Cody was dealing with Cena, Paul grabbed brass knuckles, tried to sneak attack Cody from behind,
But Cody saw it coming.
ducked it. And Jey Uso, who'd recovered from Cena's attack, was right there. Spear. He speared Logan Paul.
Okay.
Jey immediately followed up, another Uso splash onto Paul. And crucially, the reports stressed the match was still technically ongoing through all this madness.
And the ref, Zapata.
He came too. Just as Jey made the cover after the second splash, Zapata recovered enough, slid back in, and counted the 1, 2, 3.
Jey Uso wins. Retains the World Heavyweight Championship. What a finish.
Absolutely wild. But honestly, as big as the title retention was, what happened immediately after the bell? The sources called that maybe even more important.
Cody Rhodes on the mic, right?
Instantly. Grabbed a microphone right as the credits were apparently starting to roll. Literally got his message in right at the buzzer before the show cut off.
Talk about timing.
Yeah, one report described it like Cody grabbed the mic like it was the game ball, just took charge.
And he had a message for Cena.
A very direct one. Said something like, "Sorry, the John Cena farewell tour rode right through Rhodes country, but hey, I'm back, and I'm ready to fight."
Ooh, okay. Setting something up.
Exactly. And then came the challenge. The part the sources called the real meat of the matter. Cody points out Cena's got a buddy now in Logan Paul.
But he's got family. He's got his brother, Jey Uso.
Precisely. And then boom, Cody challenges John Cena and Logan Paul to a tag team match at Money in the Bank, June 7th.
There it is. That explains a lot.
It really does. According to the analysis we read, this challenge clarifies everything. It tells you why that Gunther title defense against Jey is happening on Raw later, not at the big premium live event.
Because this tag match is the main event story for Money in the Bank.
Seems like it. And it obviously keeps the Jey Uso Logan Paul thing going, just folds it into this bigger tag feud now.
Did the sources mention anything about those Travis Scott rumors? Were people thinking he might be involved with Cena at Money in the Bank?
They did mention those rumors, tagging with Cena, maybe a six-man with Jimmy Uso involved too. But the consensus now, based on this challenge, is that Cena and Paul versus Cody and Jey is the plan. Travis Scott seems unlikely for an in-ring role now.
Interference, still possible, I guess. It's wrestling.
Always possible. But the commentary quoted in the sources sounded pretty relieved it's Cena and Paul, not Cena and Travis Scott. One called that idea ridiculous.
One thing the commentary did bring up, though, was Cena teaming with Logan Paul. Does that fit his whole farewell tour vibe? Paul's pretty controversial.
Yeah, that's a fair point the sources raised. Is this pairing really about a feel-good retirement run for Cena? Or is it more about using Cena's star power to, boost Paul and create this huge main event attraction with Cody and Jey?
Seems more like the latter, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's zoom out. Look back at the whole segment match, post-match chaos challenge. What was the overall feeling from the sources we dug through?
Mixed, it sounds like. Especially in the match quality itself.
Yeah, somewhat mixed. Some felt Jey looked great, really strong. But they found it hard to get into Paul's performance, maybe felt a bit repetitive compared to his other matches.
But others acknowledged the time issue.
Right. Others basically said, look, given how incredibly short it was and how much they had to pack in, you can't really judge the in-ring stuff by normal standards. But for TV, as a segment designed to get you hyped for the next big thing,
It worked. It was successful.
that seemed to be the takeaway. It achieved its main goal, which was setting up the future.
Let's take a look at what Dave Meltzer had to say about this match. The notes kick off with the rating 3 1/4 stars.
Yep. 3.25.
Which, for anyone familiar, that's solid. Maybe a bit better than average, but definitely not, like, blowing the doors off.
No, exactly. It sets a baseline. Functional, maybe.
But then the notes immediately give some context, which is where it gets really interesting.
Ah, you mean the Puerto Rico detail.
Yeah. It says Jey Uso actually flew down to Puerto Rico. That's where Logan Paul's based, right?
Right.
Flew down specifically to rehearse the match with him beforehand.
That's what the notes indicate.
Hold on. Rehearse. Like actually run through the spots, the sequences, maybe the whole thing. Uso flew internationally for that.
Seems like it. And the notes apparently add something else. That this kind of thing, this pre-match full rehearsal, it's reportedly pretty standard for Logan Paul and WWE.
Wow. Okay. So that's quite a level of preparation, not just sketching stuff out backstage day of.
No, it implies some serious planning. Detailed choreography, maybe.
Okay, so you hear that right. Significant pre-planning, a dedicated rehearsal trip. You'd kind of expect that to lead to a super smooth, maybe even like a really great match, wouldn't you?
You might think so, yeah. That level of prep often aims for perfection.
But then we get to the actual critique. alongside that 3.25-star rating.
And yeah, this is where it kind of shifts. Despite all that reported rehearsal, Meltzer's notes apparently just called the match fine.
Fine.
Ooh.
That doesn't exactly scream success, does it?
No. Fine, in wrestling review terms, often means it happened. Nothing went wrong, maybe, but it wasn't exciting.
Competent but forgettable.
Pretty much. It did the job, hit the spots, but lacked, that spark, that drama. And the notes went further, didn't they?
They did. It explicitly says it was not one of Paul's good matches.
Okay, so not just fine in a vacuum, but specifically below par for him?
Right, compared to his own previous standard.
Yeah.
That's another layer. Was there anything else, any more specific issues flagged?
Yeah, one more key criticism highlighted was that it was rushed.
Rushed. But they rehearsed it extensively. How does that happen? Seems like the opposite should be true.
It does seem paradoxical, doesn't it? That's the puzzle these notes kind of leave you with.
So why would it feel rushed after all that practice?
Well, could be a few things. Maybe they tried to cram too much into the time they actually got on the show. Or, sometimes sticking too rigidly to a rehearsal plan can make things feel unnatural, maybe even rushed if the timing feels off live.
Or maybe something just went wrong on the night. Time cut short.
Could be. We don't know for sure from just these notes. But the combination fine and rushed after hearing about the detailed rehearsal, it suggests that whatever they planned in Puerto Rico, it didn't quite translate into a smooth, top-tier performance in the reviewer's opinion.
And the finish itself, despite maybe the match before it being rushed, was generally seen as exciting.
Yeah, described as a pretty hot finish just by sheer volume, right? Cena's interference, Cody's return, the brawl, the challenge. Bang, bang, bang. Lots happening.
And again, the sources kept coming back to this. The ending wasn't just an ending. It was the whole point.
It really felt like the entire main event segment was built backwards from that Money in the Bank challenge. That was the destination they needed to reach in that limited time.
It really is amazing when you think about it. Under 10 minutes of actual match time, plus maybe a few minutes after, and you got a world title defense. A massive return. A clear setup for a huge PLE tag match. Just packed in there.
It really highlights how live TV works. Those tight time slots, the need to keep multiple stories moving forward. It shapes everything, even a world title main event.
So it leaves you with this thought, really, from looking at all this commentary. When you're under those kinds of constraints, does prioritizing the big moments, the returns, the challenge, the angle advancement, even if the match itself feels shortchanged, does that create more buzz, more memorable TV? Or when you're watching, are you left feeling like, man, I wish that wrestling match had gotten more time to tell its own story? What resonates more with you?